Welcome back. This time we're talking about Legion, Season 1, Episode 2, Chapter 2. Now, if you've seen my review for the pilot episode, you know that I was a little late to the party on this, and I'm now trying to catch up so I can be a regular reviewer of this because I've fallen in love with this show after just 2 episodes. I like the characters, I like the actors who play those characters, I love the storytelling, I love how they have just managed to capture that kind of manic feel of just not knowing for sure what's real, what's not, telling their stories across multiple timelines and dreamscapes and things like that. I just, and the way they have combined sort of this kind of nebulous timeline that we're really not exactly sure when it's set to add to the just questions that are surrounding this story. And speaking of the story, this episode picks up pretty much immediately after the end of the first episode, in which David was rescued by Dr. Bird and her followers from the section agents. And now David has arrived at this facility called Summerlin. Now, before I get any further, let me say that this review will contain spoilers for this entire episode. And the second caveat, as I said in my review of the first episode, I am not an X-Men expert. So I will not be approaching this from trying to find Easter eggs and references to the comic books. I'm going to be approaching this as a series and how it holds up on its own from the point of view of someone who knows basic X-Men lore, but nothing, I would imagine, specific enough to really affect this particular story, at least the way it's being presented thus far. Now, my fear at the end of the first episode, especially with that great action set piece during the escape, was that all of the aesthetic and storytelling techniques that they had used to make that pilot episode so unique were basically going to be over, and now we were going to get sort of an X-Men light type storyline where we have various mutants fighting against the government agents, and it was going to be a lot more traditional. Fortunately, this episode proved me wrong in all those cases because we kept all of those same aesthetics, the same storytelling techniques, where we get a story told across multiple time points as well as a mixture of dreams and hallucinations, and never really sure what is real and what isn't. Like I said in my review of the first episode, that episode's theme sort of was, if you boiled it down to one sentence, what would it be like for someone with substantial telekinetic and telepathic powers if everyone believed they were insane? Now, this episode begins the construction of a second part to that question. If we indeed do have someone, in this case David, who is actually a highly powerful telepathic and not actually insane, then why is he still having these very disturbing, very unusual hallucinations? And it's very clear that there's some dark things happening both in the present as well as David's past. And we get to see a lot of that past through dream manipulation. We meet a new character, one of Dr. Bird's followers, Autonomy, who is played by Jeremy Harris. And he is a dream artist, able to kind of go into people's minds and allow them to experience their memories and sort of a VR recreation of it. And it's through that we get to see, again, the story told from several points in time. We have the present at Summerlin, with the dream artistry work followed by David getting an MRI. Then in the past, we have 2 moments that appear to have been before David was institutionalized. One is him being interviewed by a psychiatrist, and then there are moments that preceded that, which is him hanging out with Lenny, first selling a stove and then later doing drugs together. And then going even further back, we see moments of David's childhood, hanging out with his sister Amy, seeing a brief moment with his mother, and then getting probably one of the more disturbing moments of this episode, in that his father is reading him this angry child children's book about death and horror. Obviously, it appears that his father, however he is portrayed in this show, and we don't get to see his face in this episode, is going to play a significant role to this mystery. The other recurring element, again from the first episode going into this one, is the devil with the yellow eyes. We get to see him hallucinating her. At least we think he's hallucinating her while he's high with Lenny. Later, he seems to be getting attacked during his time in the MRI. How this all ties together, we still don't know. Now, on a more basic level, we do get a little bit more foundation on exactly how things happened after David and Sid swap places in the previous episode. We get to see Sid's point of view in her time in David's body after she accidentally locked everyone into their rooms and killed Lenny, which is basically she was taken by Dr. Bird's people thinking that she was David, and then she swapped back, her body swapped back. Exactly how her powers work is a little murky. But she ended up in their car and taken away. So as long as what we're being told is the truth, then she is not an agent, has not been with the Summerlin folks for very long. That her arriving at the facility and becoming attached to David, at least from what we know right now, appears to have been natural. That just happened. Her backstory as far as how she got to be institutionalized and how she was dealing with her own powers is a story we still don't know. And along these lines, we did get a nice scene with Sid and David talking about the fact that Lenny was killed, and David actually quotes Lenny talking about the bazooka and how it wasn't her fault, which does open up an interesting question. He saw Lenny after he was out of the facility when he was at his sister's in the basement. She was very dead. There seems to be no question that Lenny did die during that event. So him seeing her, was that a true hallucination? Was it sort of some withdrawal of him not being on his meds anymore? Or is that something that goes further into his powers, that he really did see her or some version of her? Or was it just a run-in-the-mill hallucination? That was an interesting thing, as we're now getting, again, a better grasp on the timeline of things and the fact that he is not actually insane, or perhaps he really is insane and just happens to be an insane telepathic. Those are the mysteries that they're keeping. We're getting answers to some things, but there's still a lot of mysteries to go, and I think they've done a good job over these 2 episodes to not feel like they're dragging their feet, and they're also not racing as well. Now, the other big mystery that came out of these flashbacks is during his talk with the psychiatrist, and he talked about how as a child the stars spoke to him, while this conversation's going on is when the door opens and the psychiatrist goes to close it, and that was a nerve-wracking, tension-filled moment. We didn't know if the psychiatrist was about to get eaten by the devil with the yellow eyes or something else, but it was an incredibly effective scene. But it really did seem to tie into him talking about the stars. So how that's going to tie into it, obviously with the X-Men mythos, there's a lot of ways they could bring aliens in. It doesn't always have to be just mutants. Whether or not that's the case, I don't know. I really don't know enough and don't want to get too much into speculation, but that seems to be an important scene as far as why those kind of things were happening when he was talking about the stars. And of course, the episode ends with a horrific cliffhanger in that his sister Amy has been taken by the section people. He's able to actually kind of project himself to see her and actually speak where she could hear him, showing another level of his powers. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to actually do anything about it, and he's going to go off and try to save her, and Sid actually talks him down and talks some sense into him, both in the fact that if he waited a little while, he could go better trained and more powerful, as well as the obvious thing that her kidnapping is bait. Let's just hope that she was right, and that the eye, as we learn in the opening narration, isn't going to just kill her with those kind of eel leech looking things. So that was the second episode. I loved it almost as much as the first one, and the only reason I didn't love it as much as the first one is just because that was just such a perfect episode. This was another great one. Love the storytelling. I love how they're sort of expanding the story out. Have no idea what's going to happen next, but I can't wait to find out. So if you've seen this episode, what did you think about it? Do you like the way they're telling the story, the aesthetics, the camera work, everything else? What's your favorite part of the episode, and what was something you might not have liked? As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other reviews, and until next time, listen to the stars if they start talking to you.